and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and Becky.
Good evening, good morning, and good night, whoever you are, wherever you are around the globe. This is Dave and Meckie's Shiny Side Out. We broadcast on WZCR, coming to you from Australia for Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com. And as you heard the bumpers, it is the most subscribed to, I don't know, possibly. Yeah, well, I know what it is. It is home to fresh, unfiltered ideas and conversations in the chat room at the website. And the website's also a great place to get your merchandise. Do that and support the station that way. It's very easy. You just buy something for yourself. You can get a mug, t-shirt, hoodies, all kinds of really cool things. And the artwork on those is done by one of the other hosts, a mad painter. He's very good. And if you can find any other work that he does, I'm sure you'll be interested in it enough to purchase something. Shiny Side Out also has some merch on Zazzle. And we've created dual branded hoodies and mugs and things like that. So if you like Shiny Side Out and freedomslips.com, or Revolution Radio, I should say, then feel free to help us out a little. We only get I think $1 per item that you purchase. And if you feel free, do feel free to gift them to someone else, or you can simply, I think we have a donate button on our website as well. But, it's all about the station. So donate to the station first, and they'll probably take cash transfer or an EFT. There's a whole bunch of other ways. So you can become a Patreon. You can mail a check to an address if you like. That's good. That all helps. It isn't free to run the station, and none of the hosts get paid. So if you're a sponsor looking to sponsor somebody, then feel free to get in contact with Meckie and I via our website, or any of the station's hosts via the station's website. And they can do an online read or a live read on air. They can play bumpers within their show. They can advertise your product anyhow you decide that that's appropriate. If there was a group of people who, had long-term storage food for sale or something like that, we'd be certainly in favor of promoting something like that. But as it is, we don't get paid from anybody. So we do this because of the love of it. And this is the 11th year and show number 561 as Shiny Side Out. And we've already broken the hundreds in Plato's Cave as well. So when you total it all up, that's a lot of hours on air. And we really do appreciate it. You can catch us, as in Shiny Side Out, on air, online, and anywhere using your smart device. Or you can grab an app to listen on, say you've got a tablet, or you want to just do it through the website, you can do that. You can do that directly from freedomslips.com. Or you can just sit at home and listen on a conventional looking Grace tabletop digital radio. It's actually really cool looking. And it looks like the thing that my grandmother had, but it's digital. And you can just tune in that way. I like it. If you missed Solaris's show, then she comes on before us. Tonight, she had on her Raven Stars Witching Hour Madeline Rudy and Caroline Bell Trumpelty. I hope I've said that correctly. And actually listened to the last half, and it's so entertaining. I love it. The banter that goes on is like, you're like the fly on the wall to a bunch of really good friends. And it's very good. So if you just tuning in now, and catching Shiny Side Out, or you're listening to this through YouTube archives or even the station's archives for that matter, which are free. If you like, you can tune in and download. Tune in, probably you can just download. You can log on to the website and download for free the archives of any of the hosts from Revolution Radio. And if you like us, you can just download and binge our shows. You can do the same with Solaris's or any other host's shows. It's actually pretty good for driving. If you're driving any great distance for the holiday period, you might think about doing it. If you're going on long flights, you can just download them onto your phone and you can listen to them offline, which is really neat. And if anyone has done that for any of our missing shows, please get in contact with us and see if you can send us a copy of those. And if you're from Revolution Radio's early days, when you could buy selected episodes from hosts' shows, this is from the early years, maybe the first 3 years. If you've bought one of those CDs, dig it out for us and see if there's a Shiny Side Out, because it may contain one of our lost shows. We can never get them back. Time Machine didn't get past the paywall back then, and we can't see it. We can't get them, and they're gone. And Jim Mars is the most important one for us, and I think we still had a couple of others, but they were the most important to us, which we lost through YouTube, just deleting them. But that was not our account back then. We really wish we'd been on top of it, and I lost a hard drive with a whole bunch of archives. I restored some data, but most of it was corrupted, and I couldn't use it. So sadly, that's the end of that. Welcome to country. So I'm broadcasting out of Darkinjung country, which is around the Gosford area of New South Wales. And if you live anywhere in Australia, you're probably already familiar with who the traditional custodians of the land were, or are, I suppose, because time's irrelevant. So whoever they are, please get in contact with them in some way, just by knowing who they were and what they used to do on the land. That'll help us in the future. It'll certainly help you. And how they were able to survive in their environment and what they did, particularly to, in Australia, certainly, bushfire control. What did they eat? What were the food sources around, rather than planting crops and taking all of the native plants away and putting, call it just foreign plants in. Rather than doing that, how do they live? And find out how they did that and see if you'd be able to do it, just curiously. Because where Meki and I live in Australia, we've done that. Most Australians are aware of what area they live in and which people were there beforehand, before, say, I don't want to say Invasion Day, but before our land was taken from the traditional owners. And it's very sad. I'm not sure that it's going to be handed back, but apology was made at one point. I think recognition of them is one of the stepping stones towards acceptance, and whether we'll ever be forgiven is one thing, but if we can work together to make a better future, I think that's something, and we really do need to learn from them. So Meki and I pay our respects, even though in his absence, we pay our respects to the traditional owners, the elders of those people, past, present, and future. Just thank you for getting past the intro, and congratulations on doing so. You're an intrepid listener if you've done that and you're still with me with all of my ramblings. Now, because I'm on my own today, I know that Meki is currently driving from his weekend away with the family, that he'll be en route or en route to his house, but it'll be consuming this time we would normally be on air. Because for us here in, beautiful east coast of Australia, in New South Wales, that's about midway up, from about midway down to about 2/3, down the coastline. It is coming up to 6:15 p.m. on Sunday. Yes, it's true. If you live in America, we're coming to you from the future. Ooh. Where you've just broken into Sunday, where we're 2/3 of the way through. Anywho, I wanted to break this show up today and talk about a few things rather than it turn into the Krusty the Clown show where he has a scorpion and a battery and he's doing, through lack of Itchy and Scratchy, he's acting out the Itchy and Scratchy and intro. We're holding the scorpion in a pair of tongs and holding the battery. They bite, they zap, they bite, they zap, they bite. I don't want that to turn into that, where Krusty have been broadcasting continuously for 72 hours. That's not my goal here. My goal here is to entertain. So I'm going to start with robo-debt. Now, if you don't know what that is, if you don't live in Australia, robo-debt is the former governance, those political party government, who put into place an automated system based on an algorithm and an auto dialer, a way of being able to get in contact with those people that it believed owed money through what you could say the dole or unemployment benefits, or even other benefits that are paid by the government to people who either were unemployed or weren't, or these were, pension people or medical benefits or something like that the government had provided. Where they'd become into debt, this was to recover that debt from people who, I can only presume, were, for the most part, still unemployed. Now, the algorithm that determined how much they paid was horrendously out. I mean, grossly incorrect. And in a lot of cases, it just called up someone who had absolutely no money and then told them they owed $30,000 to the government. And they were sent letters in that same program and told, if you don't pay this, blah, 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 the fines, blah, 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 it's only ever going to get out of control. It'll become out of control so quickly that you could never, ever pay it back. And this caused the loss of lives. People who were at the end of their tether quite some time ago, just struggling to keep themselves fed and homed, took their own lives because of the confrontation of these letters and phone calls, and their impending doom of never ever having any money ever again was just too great, and it ended people's lives. People paid back endless money. They, in fact, borrowed money to be able to pay back the government, believing this all to be 100% accurate. And in hindsight, now it was discovered that no, it wasn't entirely correct. Half the numbers weren't real. They were asking people to pay back, your benefits will be held back until you can pay this off. What? Call this number to make a payment plan. And it was real. It was a real thing operated by the government. Sadly, to the detriment of the people, and it was finally forced to cease, which is good. But the former Prime Minister is now going to face an inquiry around the robo-debt system, which he'd signed off on. His treasurer had posed it to government, it had passed, they had a majority, it became a thing, and then the rest is history now. And sadly, for those people who were either affected directly or as a subsequence of their relatives taking their own lives, or any other outcome that was negative. Like, I feel for you. I think everyone who was forced to participate in that scheme realised just how bad it was. Lawyers have gotten onto that as a class action now against the government. And hopefully that thing will never, ever happen again. It's appalling that something that seemed so reasonable, I suspect. They should have had filters on it. They should have said, look, if it's 1 cent, who cares? Right? We'll just send a letter and say, look, if it's under $50, we're just not going to. We're going to stretch that over 12 months. We're not going to pay you this. We're going to help you pay it back. But to be honest, if you're on unemployment benefits, the amount of money that you get anyway is not sufficient to pay any kind of rent of any property at all, unless you're sharing the rent multiple ways in a very poor area, in very squalid conditions, with other people who are also very poor. And there isn't really a way out of that. So I really feel sorry for those people. I've only ever been on unemployment benefits for, I think, like 2 weeks or something, like 3 weeks between jobs. And it was pretty awful, to be honest. It only paid for me enough to be able to get public transport to, I couldn't afford fuel or anything, public transport to my next interview. And you just, look, it's some money, any money is good, and thank you the government for giving the money. But I think of how we're going to go, because I liken that experience to the Great Reset, to the living wage, and what that would look like for everybody. Klaus Schwab, the Bond-esque villain. He sounds like a villain from the Bond series, the Bond universe. James Bond. And he just needs a huge chair and a pussycat, like a feline to pat, and to turn and pivot on the chair, and with a monocle that drops, and announcing some terrible plan that's going to take Bond's life. That is what I'm sure he, I mean, I know he means well. He means well in the way, granted, hear me out, in the way that it leads to the victory that him, the WEF, and all of the people who support the WEF as members of the WEF, who have orchestrated a grand plan where they rule the planet. They're all signatories to the idea. They all support it. And who are these people? These are bigger than billionaires. These are tech companies, Facebook and previously Twitter, and the rest of the echelon of the highest grossing companies who wish to sustain their position in this new system, the new system being them running as stakeholders in a stakeholder economy, which means everything's to benefit them. That's don't ever confuse stakeholder economy. It is they are the profiteers in the stakeholder economy. Everything is done to support their continued leadership and existence in the stakeholder economy. Sadly, that isn't us. It isn't me. It isn't you. It isn't anyone you know. We are all everybody else in that plan. Sound a bit like Carl Sagan just then. So that as long as they remain in control, we are then subservient to them, and that includes every government official, probably voting. That could be all dismissed. We could just end up with no governance in a country system or no state government governance or no local area governance. There would be a complete shift away from that. There would simply be social media, social credit, a global cryptocurrency which would run the world. There'd be no exchange rates. If we're lucky, there'd be no sovereign crypto, but I believe there would be a sovereign digital currency, maybe not a cryptocurrency, at least a sovereign digital currency. The cost of maintaining that would be less than the cost of printing money at the moment, despite the amazing technology that's involved in printing the money that we have, certainly in Australia, the most colourful money probably on the planet, with some of the highest technology involved in its uncopyable nature, if you put it like that. The security things we have in place is nuts. And it kind of got to its pinnacle without there going any further with smart chips in the actual notes. But the materials they're made of and the inks they're made of and the micro printing that's available there and how it illuminates under different colors is really important. Each one of those adds towards also look and feel and the cut size and how the image folds back on itself in all four directions. So from side to side, as you make it like a loop of the note, from end to end, match them up. They match perfectly both that way, laterally and vertically. Each of those things work perfectly, each one of them sized just so, and they weigh just the right amount. And all of this is predetermined. All of that disappears. Every single last bit of all of that disappears, and that's the end of that. There is no more in the future. There's no plan for having any printed currency, no sovereign currency. There would be only a digital currency, and then once you've gotten to the point where you don't have any printed money, simply doing this on a keyboard, you'd be able to add any amount to anyone's account and no one else would know. The government would know. They'd be doing it. They could, rather than back it against gold, there'd be no need for that anymore. And since there's no exchange, it's only matched 1-to-1 against the global currency. Or we're only using the global currency and there is no local currency at all. However that is distributed, and however that is the final, whatever the final plan looks like, you could simply, as a government, I need every bridge rebuilt tomorrow. Done. Is that as many zeros? Do we need some more zeros? Is that looking better? Yeah, that's probably about it. Yep, hit enter. And no one knows. Suddenly all these companies are just building stuff. We all have a living wage where an amount is immediately injected into your account, let's say, and that account is what you spend locally. And if it's a living wage, then you've already negotiated anything you own to the government in order to trade that to become your living wage. Whatever that turns out to be. Hey, Gear Jammer, they're certainly not Australian notes, but they're very colourful. And so where was I? Yeah. So the living wage itself would pay for, there's no rent because you live rent-free in a place that the government owns without having to pay them any money because you've traded it. You might have owned it previously, but now you're trading it to the government so they can pay you forever an amount, some agreed amount, and then you can live forever like that. And that's only an agreement between you and the government or the members of family or whoever they are, in order to maintain an economy of sorts. This was all meant to be designed. There you go, that's the right one. Australian currency. Thank you, Gear Jammer. So those people receiving the living wage would just go about their lives without possibly needing to work. If you needed to work, you'd be living in a job, doing a job which provided something back to the community directly. That's really what it would be. Like the essential worker classification of those who were allowed to travel during the COVID lockdowns. That's probably a good way of putting it. Those persons would probably maintain a role, but they'd be paid less the living wage by their employer. So you'd get the living wage and then you'd earn money above that. But that would, if say you were on, I'm just going to use round numbers. So say you were paid $25,000 a year or $32,000 a year by the government, and you were on 50, then they would pay you, if it was 30, they'd pay you 20 if you were originally on 50. They'd only fill it back up again, and you probably wouldn't pay any tax at all because it would become irrelevant. Tax in a pure digital currency doesn't matter anymore if the government can just add money to their account and get stuff done. All of the big, huge multinational companies would be the ones who would probably get primary resource controls out of the government. They'd be the ones first requested to do all the work. They'd soon eat up all the smaller companies. As long as everyone was still kind of alive, then the economy keeps going. I don't see, this is all my own thoughts, by the way. You can disagree, and I don't mind. Disagree all you want. If you're really that strong opinion, of a strong enough opinion, join me in the chat room, freedomslips.com, and call yourself whatever you want. I don't mind. Just say, hey, Dave, and then write out your question. That's how easy it is. You can talk to us while we're on air. And if you've really got a point to make, but you're not trying to stay on point, if you really want, you can join me online, and I'll invite you to find my Skype address. I'll type it in. I'll reply to you, type it in if you wish to join me on air and talk about it. I'm happy to listen to your point of view, but don't take it too far. All right, let's just try and stay on topic. So, I was having a great discussion today with some people, like-minded people who hadn't kind of really processed the Great Reset and what it looks like. And some of these thoughts are kind of fresh for me right now because of those conversations. So I wasn't going to talk about it today. I had no plan of talking about it today, but look, here we are. So you've got to ask yourself, would you be happy signing away everything that you own to the government so that you could receive a living wage? Now, imagine that the living wage would be enough to get by on. Would you do it first, I suppose? And think about the amount that you'd require to continue living the way you'd like to live, and then think about what the government would pay you, probably significantly less, and then what would that mean to you, I suppose. Now, in the phrasing for the Great Reset, it says, you will own nothing and you will be happy. When I see my kids on their mobile phones, like 24/7, I think to myself, that is owning nothing and being happy. Because, wow, you could get them offside really quick by turning off the Wi-Fi, I suppose, or nanny app them offline. You could do that. I could isolate them into their own VLAN so they couldn't get out of anywhere. That's a technical term. That's a virtual local area network. But they don't make me grumpy. Make it good. But you can think of how once there was an established digital currency with social credit, where Oh, by the way, I love the leader. If you're not disturbing society too much, you maintain your social credit. If you became an agitator, then there would be the possibility that an agitator could be denied access to their digital currency. Just think about what that would do to you. They could limit your spending to only certain items as well. You could bleep them through the supermarket, but then it's just going to go denied, and you just can't buy, you're not allowed to buy that, whatever it is. It might be your favorite thing. There could be controls that would be put over you, which actually could, right? Because I have no connection to anything. I don't know what that layer of society that has designed themselves into being the overlords of the earth. I don't know. I don't know what they think. I know they want to keep their position. So by keeping their position, what rules would need to be put in place in order to do that? And I think social credit system would be immediately apparent. The laws wouldn't change locally in wherever you live. They'd probably be equalized across the planet. Because who'd want to have to fiddle with laws, local laws, and that's just ridiculous. It's too much administration. It would cost too much effort in, having to maintain them or know them, and then policing them would be just a nightmare. So you'd have to have agreements from the government that they would eventually transition over to this new system. But I think you'll find, if you disagree with me, I think you'll find that has already been passed through your government. It certainly happened where I live. I think it was voted for the Great Reset, 47-3. I believe it was something like that. It was certainly 3 was one of the numbers. The other number was vastly greater than 3, and it was up either in the 27s or the 47s, depending on how many parliamentarians were sitting that day. But the thing that was put in to raise the topic was we should have a discussion upon the implications of accepting the Great Reset. Now, you can only word it in such a fashion is if it's been tabled and then you get to read through it, what's been put into basically read in, and then you've read it and accepted it or not accepted it. And 3 people didn't accept it, the rest of them did. And that is establishing or acknowledging and recognizing and proceeding with the Great Reset. That's in Australia. I think that's kind of disturbing because we weren't truly told of any of the ramifications of what this will look like. The Great Reset on the TV was, environmental and this, and it doesn't matter, and you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and there'll be some living wages. But now what you're hearing the WEF coming out with, these little tiny snippets or truth drops or whatever you want to call them whatever you want. I don't really care. I don't care what you call them, but do keep up to date with what they are releasing, because they're now talking about a digital currency, a global digital currency. We've had our little play, says the Great Reset people. We've had our little play, the WEF, with crypto. Yeah, we let you play with it for a while. We see the good things, the bad things. We're going to make a digital currency that's kind of not crypto. And, the blockchain thing was pretty good. But when you're talking blockchain for Bitcoin, despite there being a limited amount of Bitcoins themselves, the current blockchain size is 330 gig and only getting bigger, which means every transaction has to tag on to the end. Ridiculous. It's Blockchain is really good if you've got small transactions on single items that build towards a greater item. So in that blockchain, you can have the manufacture date, where it was manufactured, all of the things that are important to knowing its source. You could even have, for instance, if it was a breakfast cereal, there could be like a QR code on the side of the box of cereal, which, when scanned, took you to a web page that showed the fields in the location of the growing of either the wheat or the corn or the rice or whatever it happens to be, the date that it was planted, when it was harvested, even the vehicles that it drove inside to be taken to this depot, processed, shipped to the cereal production facility via however methods you want. It could be by ship, then it could be by truck, it could be just by rail. Then processed, the processing date, it could go all the way through that. So the very cereal in the box that you've got, you could identify the true origin of those materials, whether it was the salt, whether it was the potassium, any of the fresh foods, the grains that went into it, any preservatives. You could see the chemical chain, where they came from. Each of those should be able to be listed because they're all stored within the data of the blockchain for each of those independent components. I'm probably already boring it, but I don't want to bore you with it. What I'm saying is those blockchain sizes are minuscule compared to a Bitcoin blockchain that has the history of every one of the Bitcoins, every transaction, every trade, every purchase, every sale, and it's insane. It's only ever going to get bigger. It takes 20 minutes to currently download, modify, upload, to share across the community of the blockchain holding systems in the world, and for then someone else to be able to transact. It is nuts. It's really not made for that. And that's what the WEF, in all of their wisdom, have determined, that that's not worth tracking. What's worth tracking is the currency trading. So currency trading, not between different currencies, but within the currency, tracking every cent or every dollar, depending on how you break it up. That within any environment, say within your sovereign territory, if they got rid of cash over maybe a 5-year period, where it starts as 1-to-1 and would have to be 1-to-1 all the way through till the end date. So if you had cash buried in the yard, what you're really going to need is to dig it up and trade it in. There'd have to be some kind of weird amnesty. Where'd you get the money? Shush. Shut up. Shut up, man. I didn't rob no bank. Oh, good. Well, that's good then. I don't know why you said that, but, well, whatever. So that would have to take place in order to then quantify all of that money around, switch it over to digital, and voila, now you've got yourself trapped in a system that you can never escape from. It's probably the right way to go. However, if we have a huge EMP, if there's the kill shot, if we lost power and could never recover again, all of that, say, digital currency is no more. It is gone forever. Kaputski, we're going to go back to coins or some kind of new fiat currency, starting with trading, and then we go through the full evolution of what it means to build a fiat currency, which is an accepted value for an item that isn't worth the value that's printed on it, and to avoid the ability to be able to replicate the coins in any other way, or the notes for that matter, whatever it means. The value that anyone held in the banks could never be proven again, and we're basically starting from zero. So even if you were a trillionaire, but you didn't make the cut to be part of the stakeholder economy as one of those ultra wealthy people, then you're starting like the rest of us. You're going to have to grind your own coffee after eating the beans, pooping them out. I'm kidding. There's a creature that people eat the most expensive coffee on the planet. It's some kind of rodent-y thing that eats the coffee, poops it out. It smells hideous, tastes hideous. If you like coffee, if you're a true coffee fiend, it's probably not for you. It's like eating dodo. If there was still dodo today, then there'd be people eating it that have more money than you can even possibly imagine. Anyway, I don't keep going because, wow, 3/4 of an hour just talking about what I think the WEF are going to do in the stakeholder economy of the Great Reset. I can't imagine that there'd be many things that institutions that would survive the Great Reset. I really don't. Our radio channel here on Freedom Steps would be a slippery slope for our social credit. That could slide really quick because we have opinions, and I don't think opinions on anything that is outside of the box. It's okay to talk about anything that's within the box. You talk about anything you like if as long as it's within the box. And whatever that box seems to be shrinking. And we know this because Elon Musk has recently purchased Twitter, if you're not aware. And that's brought to light some very interesting information regarding the Hunter Biden laptop. Now, I don't want to get myself cancelled, so I'm only going to say what another news story had mentioned on it, because I think that's the best way to do that. A lot of people are doing that these days. And I want to say that if you're not aware of it, previously, Twitter blocked the New York Post article prior to the election between Trump and Joe Biden, where Biden took office as a result of the election. But in a move which looks to have changed the election results, of course, if the Hunter Biden laptop was at the time proven to be true, it would have changed the election. Because the emails are damning or telling, depending on who you are. And as we've now discovered, Joe Biden had initially said he wasn't aware of any of his son's dealings. That was all his own problem. He's then said, or been reminded, that there's voice calls recorded on the laptop between him and his son, and it's completely aware that he was familiar with all of his dealings, including his drug habits, not possibly his the ladies of the night that he'd been involved with, or what kinds of drugs, or to the extent of the drugs, but he was definitely aware of those, and that he was receiving money from Ukraine government, power companies, and he was on the board, and they'd asked for favors, and all of those things that were said to have been true, but were denied by the majority of everybody. So, that's now all kind of true. I say kind of true because I'm not the one who's calling it true. So post-election, the laptop story was buried until recently and found to be the real laptop with real data on it. The FBI, all major tech companies, and the media all seem to play a part in holding the story back from the public, and therefore, in hindsight, appear to now to all be working the same goal, and that was to change the votes, or not let the information go forward into the public and be accepted, that changed the votes so that Trump is taken out of office back then, 2 years ago. Or, as I like to put it, anyone but Trump. I think the US itself was having that dilemma, that fight between itself. It was the dilemma, the social dilemma. Who do we put in place instead of Trump? And I have to say that's anyone in the Democratic Party. And you've got Joe Biden as a result of this. But the anyone but Trump just seemed to be the ideal. Because personally, I have no preference. I don't care and I don't complain about who is in the seat in the US as the head of government. I don't care. And look, to be honest, and neither should you if you didn't vote. If you did vote, then you've got the right to complain. I don't mind. But rather than complain, I would suggest that you just change the vote next time. If that makes you happy, then do that. That's your right in a democratic system. So you can stand up and complain the entire time they're in the seat. That's your right. Then you're to use the ballot box next. So I think, what is it? The soapbox, the ballot box, and the ammo box is what Jim Mars used to say. Now I don't agree with the ammo box because that's just, wow, the extremes you'd have to be at for that to happen is way beyond what I can ever imagine. So I don't condone it, but certainly speak out about it and then use your feet. Use your feet to vote. It's like if you don't like a brand, well, then don't buy it. Does it make sense? I hope it does. And that's really important. Just really two quick little stories after that, and I'll leave you to think about what those releases of Twitter emails about the Hunter Biden thing. If you haven't seen it, there's plenty out there. Just Google it and you'll find something. So that Elon Musk has released all of the emails as documentation in regards to the Hunter Biden laptop. And there's a bunch of internal conversations that took place with either the Twitter execs or between big tech to discuss what they're going to do. And you should read through that material and make your own determination about how you feel that Twitter behaved in this matter. Because deplatforming people, calling it out as hacked material where it wasn't actually a hack. The laptop itself was given to the FBI and then they kind of lost it. Yeah, what? Where's the laptop? Don't know. Well, in fact, I've got a copy. Here, would you like another copy? Because you lost the last one. Oh, no, I'm sure we've got it, but you don't know where it is. No. Yeah, so it really looks like they all colluded together, at least in ejecting Trump from the seat or pushing the ejector button, not supporting Trump that way. Is that democracy? I don't know. I don't think so. I thought the people voted with being told the truth, but what is the truth? I suppose kind of raises that question: have we been living in a pretend democracy? And if you've been listening to this show long enough, you may make that determination. If you are willing to examine the data, you may very well agree with me. And if you don't, fine. On the bottom of this YouTube clip, I would prefer that you make contact with me because I'll respond to things you write. If you disagree, tell me why. Send me links. Don't just say, oh, everybody knows. Because that's not an argument. Everyone knows that. Who? Well, I don't. Send me links Give me a good discussion, robust and thick, full of your opinion and evidence, and I'll certainly look through it. And if you're that strongly motivated to do that, would you come on air? Would you talk to me on air about it? As long as you don't use profanity, you're welcome to discuss it, and as long as you don't go off topic. I'd really like to be able to talk to you about it. So that's one. I want to talk to you about this one as well. So that's the key documents. RoboDebt, Artemis. It's due to splash down in the Pacific on the 11th of December. Good grief. That's something else. It's going to take 10 days to return. How little did they spend on fuel? I wonder if this is all about how to maintain a good fuel economy. Because, like when you coast downhill, you try not to use any fuel uphill. And that's what they're doing. Is it like the equivalent of an EV? They're running out of power, so they've got to turn off their air conditioning. Even though this flight of Artemis 1, doesn't have any people on board. They're just not running life support. Anyway, there's no point. And I wonder what it's going to mean in a long run. And it's certainly returning again from the moon. They'll have brought artifacts back with them. What's their payload ability? And I wonder what the sensors are going to prove about the Van Allen belt radiation. It's going to be very interesting to see what that turns out to be. I've got another story. This is real quick, though. I don't want to go to the other side of the break with this one. It's only light, but air taxis. There's discussion here that the next decade will see the biggest shake-up in the airline industry as local short flights can be replaced by air taxis, which are human-sized drones, for that matter. If you're not familiar with what they look like, on YouTube you can probably see it. There's these would be low-altitude domestic travel only, and they'll be assured to require a set of vast changes to aviation rules, processes, and also regulations in response to what it would mean. These drones, you can see, if you're looking at them, they've 8 or 10 blades. There's no protection around the blades. They're going to mow people down. It's worse than a helicopter. There's so many blades all around it. And the changes are going to be just as similar to when Uber took over from the regulated taxi industry for vehicular taxis. There was no legislation that allowed controlled license plates, because I think in Australia to buy a license plate cost you $250,000. That's a lot of money. It's well more than I earn, and that money just for a license plate in order to be able to drive a cab or a taxi where you can make money. And it means that the long-term view of running a taxi means you'd have to be running it, there's music, anyway, 24/7 in order to get your money back, and probably your ROI would be over, I don't know, 5-10 years. Crazy. Anyway, that's the music. I'm going to shut this YouTube down. I'm going to reinstate it again for the next hour. And if you'd like to call in, I'm going to invite it. So it'll be Dave and a roundtable after the break. Take care and donate in